Hello everyone, welcome to week 40 GT Sport Daily Race C Strategy Guide. It's Group 4 machinery and we're heading to the combined track of Yamagiwa and Miyabi in reverse at Kyoto Driving Park. So let's take a look at the detailed settings for this one. 8 laps to get round is a 2 minute 30 lap. Tyre wear just at times 4, fuel at times 2. It's only the racing hard tyres available, but crucially, looks like something new being added to the mix is there is a mandatory pit stop. So I've highlighted that there just so that you don't miss it. And that does turn what looked like a very boring no-stop race into maybe something a lot more interesting. We'll show taking a look at the implications of that mandatory pit stop in due course. Now BOP is on, it's a rolling start, damage is off and slipstream is real. So yeah, definitely a fresh combination. We definitely haven't driven Group 4 cars around this track before in Daily Race C, certainly in my time playing the game. It's a long time actually since we've driven this track at all in Daily Race C, maybe around about 2 years ago we did do it in Group 3 machinery. My claim to fame when we sort of raced that week is I was taken out live on David Perel's stream twice by the very man himself, which actually resulted in him ending his stream because he didn't want to be a danger to the other drivers on the track any further. Interesting thing for an actual real life GT3 driver to say on a sim game. Okay then, the test car for the video is the trusty Ferrari 458 Italia, pretty much my go-to car in Group 4 to be honest with you. Since I've moved to cockpit view I find this to be one of the best cars to drive from this perspective, and it is generally just a very handy Group 4 car in the vast majority of situations. The first thing I want to highlight here is just how little an impact the tyre wear is going to have on this one. So we're coming towards the end of an 8 lap run here, coming out of the final corner, and we shall zoom in on that tyre wear and I'll just sort of highlight that it's not going to play that much of a part. So around about 15% on the left hand side tyres there, a couple of very fast right hand side corners, putting a lot of load through the tyres, but I always say to really kind of have a big impact on lap times the hard tyres have to be at least 20% worn. So as I said, tyre wear not that much of an impact, so that's going to have again implications on the strategy. But let's now move on to the pit loss and the fuel. So this first tyre change we're going to do here is without changing the tyres. So I was very interested to find out how much of a difference it would be between just making a pit stop, not changing tyres, not taking on any fuel, and a pit stop where you do change the tyres. So into the box the car comes, stationary for about 1.9 seconds, and as we exit the pits I would say be very careful because this happened to me, and of course that was an AI car, but you do emerge from the pits onto the racing line, so do be careful of that. Okay then, let's now test the pit stop with a tyre change and see how much longer it takes to get the 4 tyres changed on the car, because that's going to be crucial for the strategy. If it's a long time that we lose changing the tyres, then you definitely think it'd be more beneficial to not change tyres. But however, this may well surprise you a little bit. But actually changing the tyres only takes 1.3 seconds longer, so 1.9 seconds to not change the tyres stops duration, 3.2 seconds if you do change the tyres, and that means that the pit loss with a no tyre change is 15.3 seconds and a pit loss with the tyre change 16.6. Fuel of course no issue, as I have already mentioned before. So that does kind of surprised me. I thought not changing the tyres would be a lot more beneficial in terms of time saved. Now the tyre wear is of course not very high, as we've seen earlier on, only around about 15%, but even at 50% a fresh set of tyres is certainly going to be beneficial towards the end. So the big question is, how much beneficial or how much benefit will we get from those fresh tyres in the second half of the race over a car that has not changed tyres? Let's find that out now. So we join on board our Ferrari as we come towards the end of lap number 8. Now we did stop into the pits on lap number 6 to make our mandatory pit stop. We didn't change the tyres on this run, so obviously we're going to have to deal with that tyre wear towards the end. Doesn't have a massive effect on the lap times. I think we finish here for 2 minutes 30.8, just 3 times slower than our actual quickest lap. But you definitely can just slightly feel that tyre wear towards the end of the race. Shouldn't be too much of a problem for most people though. Into the last turn we're going to come here, we did pick up a half-second penalty as well on lap number 1. A bit annoyed that we've not been able to kind of get rid of that over the course of the race, so that is going to add 1 second onto our finishing time here as we cross the start finish line. And as we do come up to the start finish line, we should be about to see what that finishing time is going to be, what's going to be our target for the next run, and it's a 2 minutes 31.5. Obviously it says 2:32 there, 0.5, because it's added 1 second on for that penalty, but that is the 8 laps with just the mandatory pit stop and not changing the tyres. Okay then, let's jump on board our Ferrari once again, but this time we have made a pit stop on lap number 4 and taken on a fresh set of boots. So we should have a kind of speed advantage over the last two free laps compared to the non-tyre change run. And you can immediately see from lap number 7 there, we've done a 1:30.0, and in lap number 8 here we're actually going to get into the 2 minute 29s, that the fresh tyres are definitely worth a considerable chunk of lap time. Maybe around about 7 tenths to 8 tenths of a second from my estimates from doing the driving here. However, of course, you are giving up 1.3 seconds in the pits to get those fresh tyres, and then possibly some track position. So it's all very, very close, it has to be said. But as we come up to the start finish line here, we'll get the finishing time for the tyre change run. Now I do think we did a slightly better job over the opening 3 laps as well, maybe compared to our first run, so probably a little bit of time gained there, and overall we actually go 2.3 seconds quicker than the no tyre change run. So we do definitely gain time back with the fresh tyres, but as you can see it's definitely not massive. I reckon it's only worth around about 2 seconds at best, which is, you know, it's a risk whether you want to have those fresh tyres towards the end. You're possibly going to have to fight through a few cars. But let's go to the part of the video where we put all the information up on the screen. We'll talk through each of the strategies, I'll give you my pros and cons, and then we shall move on to a lap guide. So first up, let's discuss the one stop with no tyre change. Now the big pro of this strategy is the fact that you save 1.3 seconds in the pit lane. Now that's not a massive chunk of time, but given the low tyre wear, the actual benefit of fresh tyres is not much more than that, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe around 2 to 3 seconds, but that's then sacrificing track position, not making the tyre change. Saving that 1.3 seconds possibly gives you track position over a car that has changed tyres, who's then going to have to try and fight their way through, possibly not just your car but maybe a couple of other cars as well. Now the interesting thing about this race, because of the low tyre wear and pit stop being mandatory, is when do you make that pit stop, because really you're going to try and make that pit stop at the most suitable time for you to get some clear track and not lose any time in traffic. So it's going to be interesting to see what lap people choose to pit on. Of course, you could pit on lap 1 all the way through to lap number 7. It's just going to depend on what's going on around you in that quest to try and find some clear track and get some uninterrupted lap times in. The one stop with the tyre change, obviously this then takes around about 1.3 seconds longer on your pit stop. You risk your track position, but the fresh tyres will prove advantageous towards the last couple of laps. You can maybe gain around about 2 to 3 seconds back with the fresh tyres, but you're possibly going to have to fight your way through a couple of cars as well. Now, doing the kind of 4-4 split will be optimal. That will mean you're on the best tyres for the longest duration in the race, but of course, with the tyre wear being so low, you can actually make that pit stop at any time, just like we discussed for the no tyre change mandatory pit stop. So you may be thinking there's a lot of traffic in front of you, there's a lot of battling going on in front of you. Maybe sort of pit on lap 2, put on a fresh set of tyres, get to the back, put in some strong lap times, then by the time it comes towards the end of the race, because you've not been kind of embroiled in any fighting, you can find yourself jumping a lot of cars towards the middle or the end of the race whenever the other cars decide to make their pit stop. What will be quite interesting about this one is that you will not know, or will not be totally clear on the race order right up until the last lap, when everybody will have finally made that one mandatory pit stop. Anyway, that's the pros and cons of this strategy. I think it's very interesting the way this one's going to work out. I'm very much looking forward to getting stuck in tomorrow morning and seeing how people deal with this mandatory pit stop. I actually think in the early stages a lot of people are not going to realise you actually have to make a pit stop, which will be quite amusing. Anyway, let's finish off the video with a lap guide of Yamagiwa plus Miyabi in the Ferrari down towards turn number 1. 100 metre board is what you're looking for. Maybe just after that you can pit down into second gear in very, very tight corner. Easy to get on the throttle too early and understeer wide. Down towards turn number 2, a kind of fast chicane. I brake on the 50 metre line. Try to clip that curb as much as you can, but it can unbalance the car as well and throw it a little bit to the left, which will compromise your line. Down towards another hairpin. It's the beginning of the curb that I use as my braking reference. Again, a very tight corner. As you get on the power as early as possible, you'll carry that speed all the way down towards a very tricky section. Now it's a downhill braking section here. I tend to come off the throttle just at the start of the curb, roll over the curb here, down into 2 gears, and then keep it nice and tight for this kind of double apex hairpin. There's a kind of bump on the crest of the hill there. If you get on the throttle too early, you will bring the rear of the car round, so do be careful of that. So we're on to the Miyabi section of the track now. We're into a very fast flowing right hand corner here. Actually a very fast flowing section altogether. I tried to keep it as tight as possible around this corner here. I just find you save yourself a little bit of lap time into a very fast chicane, so it's just a little murmur on the throttle for the first section and a little murmur of the throttle here as well, just to make sure the car stays on the track or you can't understeer. And the beginning of the curb for a kind of double hairpin corners here. The marshal's box on the right hand side is my braking reference for the tight left hand hairpin. Be careful on the throttle, there is a kind of nasty bump as you crest the hill. Again, get on the throttle too early there, you can spin the car. And up the hill we come now. We're going to need as many ponies as you can possibly muster into a fast right hander here. Just a kind of little lift off the throttle, maybe a little tiny dab on the brakes. This corner does open up so you can get on the throttle maybe a little bit earlier than you might expect. Use all the track on the left hand side, and now we come to the downhill S's. A very tricky section here. Full throttle through the first part. I lift off for the second part here. Careful of the curbs, they can upset the car and throw you off course, and end up cutting that last corner. And then down into 4th gear for the final corner here. It's very easy for the car to drift wide. This corner goes on forever and ever and ever. But eventually on the throttle we get, and we accelerate out to complete a lap of Yamagiwa plus Miyabi in the Ferrari 458 Italia. 2 minutes 30.0, and that is hopefully of some use for you in terms of getting prepared for this race. Hopefully the whole video has overall been useful with the strategy. I've given you all the times there for the pit stops. And as I said, it'll be very interesting to see how this one plays out as the week goes on, and what car obviously becomes the meta as well. We'll be jumping in the Ferrari fairly early, possibly live streaming this one on Monday morning, so do join me for that if you can. If not, we'll have some streaming later on in the week. But yeah, as I said, hopefully the video has been useful in some way, shape or form. Please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button if it has been. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye now.